Coming up, we're talking about fall festivities. We've got a family fun free fall festival this weekend. And we also are going to ask the question, did this guy dress up for Halloween as a kid? And we want to dive deeper into the conversation about multiplying. Bruce mentioned the City Network this weekend. What is that and what's happening with it? This is the True Hope Weekly. All right, well, thank you for joining us again for the True Hope Weekly. I'm your host, Garrett. I've got Bruce with me again this week. And we want to let you know first off about a fun event that's happening out in Nampa this weekend. My family is going to be there and looking forward to it. If you guys have been around for things like the extravaganza, we're doing something similar. And it's going to be happening at New Direction Church in Nampa. And why don't you just say something quick about that, Bruce?
Well, we're planning to move to True Hope Nampa and probably January 1st-ish, but we wanted to get the word out in the community and the neighborhood there to just minister and serve the community. And so we decided that let's do a fall festival.
Yeah, I heard something like 1,500 mailers went out.
1,500 mailers. We have no idea how many will come, but
yeah.
Of course, extravaganza, when Dina's in charge, good things happen. And,
absolutely.
And bases are covered. So there's going to be candy and hot dogs and games and carnivals, kind of atmosphere. It's all going to be safe, COVID safe. And again, just like at church, we've been pretty careful about that. So we want to accomplish both of those goals.
Absolutely. So make sure to put that on your calendar. That's this Sunday, October 25th from 4 to 6 p.m. at New Direction Church in Nampa. So I have a question, Bruce, and I'm just curious if you dressed up for Halloween when you were a kid.
Well, I grew up in a pretty conservative home.
Right.
So I don't remember a lot. We did do Halloween. We didn't do the fancy, go down to the store and buy the latest, Batman or whatever. So most of the time it was homemade kinds of costumes. But actually I got into Halloween way more when I was in college. And I remember one time, this was when my wife and I were just dating, and we went to a Halloween party, and I found this huge pumpkin. Huge pumpkin. We hollowed it out. I put a plastic garbage bag over my head with, holes for eyes and breathing, and put this thing and wore it all day. It was probably the best costume.
Real pumpkin.
A real pumpkin. It was heavy.
Yeah.
Kind of stinky.
Oh.
Wasn't the most comfortable, but it was probably the best costume I ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I wish we had a picture of that. I don't know if you can do one up, but that'd be pretty fun. Well, let's talk about multiplying a little bit more. We've been in this conversation, and we've been talking through our mission statement, and right at the beginning we say we want to be a multiplying community, and we've been talking a lot about that, and especially just with upcoming events with True Hope Nampa. And we want to dive a little bit further into that, and then next week we'll begin talking about what does it mean to be transformed by the gospel. And Pastor Matt is going to be back over here downtown with us to have a little bit of a conversation about that next week, so make sure to be here for that. But let's talk a little bit more about multiplying. One of the things that attracted me to True Hope Church when I originally came was the multiplying mentality that was here. My wife and I had moved to Boise and wanted to plant a church, and Bruce kind of came alongside of us and said, hey, we want to help you, coach you along with that, because our passion is to see church planters being sent out into the city. And that some of you know about that and have known about our journey and how God kind of, called us to stay here a little longer and just realized that we had some more growing that we needed to do and preparation for that. And we've been thankful to be right here at True Hope and just growing into all that God has for us. And one of the things that my wife gets to do is through that process, she was hired on as the administrative assistant for the City Network. Right. And so works with Bruce and the guys that are on the board there quite a bit. And so I get to hear quite a bit about it. And Bruce, when you mentioned it on Sunday, I just thought it would be great to have a little bit of a further conversation about what is this organization, what's happening with it. Bruce, why don't you tell us a little bit, though, before we get into that, what is a foundational perspective that you really need to have as a church in order to multiply or to have something like the City Network that you're involved in?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of foundational stones that have to be in place for a church to be a multiplying church. One is you have to truly believe in the Great Commission. Jesus said, go and make disciples. And if you asked 100 pastors, do you believe in the Great Commission? They'd all say yes, right? But talking about it and doing it are two different things. And so, the first piece really needs to be, do I believe that this is our purpose, our calling, our mission, to go into the world and make disciples, and then baptize them and teach them to follow Jesus, do all that, to observe all that he commanded us. So that's the first piece. The second piece is really what I've discovered, both by experience and lots of reading on this. Church plants are much more effective at reaching their neighbors than existing churches. And the older a church is, the less likely a person will come to Jesus through that ministry. Now, we bucked that trend a little bit at True Hope Church, but there's no question that this is one of the best mechanisms or methods, strategies to reach the lost. If you weren't here Sunday or didn't see online, I put up a list of 31 churches that have started or are going to start in the last 3 years. And I showed that if they all ran 100, that would represent 3,100 people attending a church. If they all ran 200, that would be 6,200. 6,200 people reached. And so churches that are planted grow to 100 pretty easily. 200 not as easy. Getting past 200 is pretty tough. But what you have is multiplying pockets across the city that each one, like a cell, begins to grow. And so a church has to believe in the Great Commission, has to believe that multiplying churches is a strategic way to accomplish that. And then third thing is they have to be willing to sacrifice. Mm-hmm. Sacrifice leaders, sacrifice resources, sacrifice volunteers, and sacrifice the goodwill of people who just want to sit and soak, good Bible teaching. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Christians that really don't want to be in the war. Mm-hmm. They just want to be spectators. Nobody listening, of course, but right. People back east, or in California, right? Mm-hmm. So, those are three things that just absolutely have to be the case, and we've been working on all three of those hard to ourselves become a multiplying church.
Yeah. Well, we never reach or make that plateau, but we're always aiming for it. So, right. So what is the City Network, and kind of, how did that get started, and what's happening with it currently?
So about 3 years ago, Robert Frazier, who started Redemption Hill, came to town and wanted to start this church, felt called by God to start a church in Boise, and we began to talk, and then and Matt was a part of that conversation, and so we started with 5 individuals, believing that this whole thing of church planning works better when we work together. Mm-hmm. And so we said, here's the boundaries, here's the parameters. We want every church to be a multiplying church, and we want to partner and link arms with any church that puts the gospel of Jesus Christ first, meaning that they believe that Jesus came, he died on the cross for our sin, that we're sinners and we need to accept him. Churches that believe the Bible is the Word of God, not just a suggestion or man-made. And so there are some parameters to the City Network, but we have now over 100 churches and pastors who have said, we want to be part of this. Mm-hmm. And so there is a growing movement. It's getting more momentum all the time. Yeah. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were talking about the number of churches and needing to go up with the rising of our population in Boise, can you speak to why don't you think churches can just get bigger to meet the need rather than starting a bunch of small churches?
They can. We can, sort of. I mean, at downtown, we're landlocked. And so we crossed this bridge a long time back, realizing that, to be a church of 3,000 people downtown is going to be a lot of work. Mm-hmm. We'll have to have cars stacked on top of each other, right. For one thing, just parking, buildings, and it's just going to be more strategic for us to multiply out and send.
Think of how much money it would cost to expand our sanctuary or something along those lines to be able to seat more people, or conversely to have 10 services, you know what I mean? So
there's that, but there's also, I've become, the older I am, and the longer I've been in ministry, and the more I look at our culture, the less I think the large megachurch. In fact, I think the large megachurch in some ways is making the problem worse. Mm-hmm. We're creating sideline Christians. Mm-hmm. Small churches, it's real hard to sit on the sidelines because everybody has to play.
Yeah.
If they don't play, they don't survive.
Mm-hmm.
In a large church, and this is one of the attractive things about a large church, is I can go, I can be anonymous, I can leave, nobody knows me. One day you'll wake up and go, nobody knows me, mm-hmm. right? I don't have any friends, I don't have any comrades, mm-hmm. in this. And so often at that time they start to drift to other churches, but I just become less convinced that the large megachurch, the big building, the massive television presence is really that effective. Mm-hmm. It's reaching people, mm-hmm. and it's getting rich, mm-hmm. but is it really accomplishing disciple making?
Yeah. Well, and this is another question we didn't talk about discussing, but in True Hope, when we launch a campus, it's different than when some churches launch a campus. It's not necessarily just copying and pasting everything.
It's not a clone.
Mm-hmm. Where everything is, from one main place sent to these other locations. It's a different model, right? So what does that look like? How is it different?
Well, when we started Dry Creek Community Church up in Hidden Springs, I was going back and forth. Once a month I'd go up mm-hmm. there and preach live, and then they'd do the video thing of me or whoever was preaching every week. And after about a year of that, even before then, I realized I'm not cut out for this. I felt like I was married to two women. When I was in Hidden Springs, I felt like, wow, I sure would like to pastor this church and help it grow and reach
right.
into the community and so on. And so just having a presence up there wasn't our goal. Mm-hmm. It was to have a church mm-hmm. up there. And so that has translated into this campus idea, so that Collister campus is its own church, mm-hmm. but connected DNA-wise, right? And Napa probably will be the same thing. That's the model. Now, God does what he wants to do, mm-hmm. or there might be a pastor that says, I want more autonomy, or some will go and will have to help more. Mm-hmm. For example, Napa is going to be, that particular part of Napa is going to be a less, the income is lower. Mm-hmm. And so most likely financially we have to help there more than we did at Collister. Mm-hmm. I don't know. God is certainly blessed as we've done this. So mm-hmm. so we'll find out. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting, and I can't help but also mention that the City Network has put on some amazing conferences by bringing Exponential to Boise, and you guys have plans to do a conference coming up this next year. So tell me just a little bit about that briefly.
Well, it's going to be a conference for churches that want to multiply, for church planters. Some who will come to this are really on the front end, right near the door. Others are older churches like ours, which is my heart. I really want to see more pastors like me who've been in the valley for 5, 10, 15, mm-hmm. 20 years, commit to and see the value of multiplying. So all of the above will be encouraged to be at this conference.
Yeah, and it's great to see because Exponential is this huge conference a lot of people know about. We've done that for a couple of years, but this is going to be its own thing.
Right.
And we still have a great line of speakers already in process that, and so I'm excited to see what's going to
It's not just for pastors. I mean, if you're listening, this sort of lights a fire in you, mm-hmm. And it might be a new sense of feeling that wow, maybe I can do this. I'm going to retire. I'm recently retired, and this would be a real cool project. Then I'd say come to this conference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just God does so many clarifying things when you get a step away, spend some really time just meditating on Him, worshiping Him, and hearing from great speakers who challenge you. So thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of True Hope Weekly. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you this week. We're talking about God is in charge. So hope to see you this weekend.